Okay, so basically this is a small section of a introduction workshop to creating food forests. It's aimed at adult home gardeners that basically live on acreage, set in the subtropics, so southeast Queensland, and it would be held in a garden with a young food forest, so either mine or a friend's. Next slide, please. So my goals for this are for people to start thinking about plants work together to help each other and understanding how plants and animals can do the work for you. And the outcomes would be to create a guild for several subtropical tree species. You can list functions of individual plants and know how to incorporate animals into a guild. So I'm doing this as a PowerPoint, but just think of yourselves as actually being in the garden, and then I've got a few photos to sort of help you imagine that you're still in the garden. And I've got a couple of little feedback sessions, so if maybe just 2 or 3 of you can interact with those bits, that would be great. Okay, next slide, please. So here we are in a young food forest. And so we've been talking about how great food forests are, and lots of people really love the idea of a food forest, but don't know where to get started. So we're going to talk about now about how you actually select which plants go with which other plants to help a food forest thrive. So when we're thinking about a food forest, what kind of needs do you think a food forest has, if someone would like to call out?
Ideally,
food forest needs. Sorry, Deb?
so ideally, they all help each other, like they might attract pollinators, or they might attract insects that keep other pests down.
Yep. Is there any other needs that a food forest might need? Or even just basically fruit trees? What do fruit trees need?
So they need sunshine and water and some soil.
Yep, great. Is there anything else? Would anyone else like to have a turn?
In a general term, we will have integrated pest management system.
Right. Great. Okay. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Greta. So basically, yeah, we're looking at the water. We want a healthy soil food web, healthy soil. We want nutrients. We want mulch. We want shelter, pollination to occur, some pest management and disease management. So when we're putting plants together to create food forests, we call it something, we call it a guild. So a guild of plants and animals. Next slide, please, Greta. So this is another part of the garden you can imagine that you're in. This is a very young food forest. Next slide, please, Greta. So a guild. So there's a few different definitions of a guild, but I like this one because it's quite nice and simple. So a guild is a community of plants and animals that grow well together because they benefit and support each other, forming a mutual support network. So in order to create a useful guild, you really need to know and understand your plants. So things like knowing your plants, you want to know perhaps their size and their shape, what kind of soil they like, their kind of water. So do they like very moist environments or do they like a drier environment? Is there any other things you might want to know about your plants that you're thinking about for your food forest? So think about a specific species of plant. So, actually general. So, I'll just keep going. So the other things you might want to think about is their root shapes and sizes. So are their roots go very deep, big tap roots, or do they have shallow roots? Are they tuberous? Are these plants frost sensitive, or perhaps they're very susceptible to wind? And you might want to know things like when they flower and whether or not their flowers are in danger of being blown off during the wind. So now we're getting to know your plants, so having a deep dive into the things that your plants need and their habitat, so how big and tall and their shape. Actually, next slide, please, Greta. Greta?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things I discovered when I, back again, please. When I started growing food was asparagus. So asparagus, I discovered likes to, it grows up nice and tall and it then falls over and gets in the way of the path. And things like zucchinis, I also discovered that zucchinis don't tend to grow where you plant them. So they often grow where I don't want them. So you want to know these things about your plants so you can put them in community together. So the other thing you might want to think about, so in terms of your food forest and meeting the needs of the food forest, so are the functions that each plant can contribute. So a function might be something like providing shade or suppressing weeds. Can anyone else think of some other functions that we might be looking for in our food forest that plants can do?
Support for climate.
Sorry, what's that, Foz?
Support for climbing plants.
Oh, yes, terrific. Anything else?
They might provide shade, early shade if they're fast growers for other plants that are slower.
Yep, terrific. Anything else?
Habitat.
Habitat? And what might you mean by habitat?
Habitat for the mobile species in your food forest. So for pollinators, yeah.
Terrific, thank you. Next slide, please, Greta. So I've got a little list here as well that we might think of. So when we're thinking of putting together a guild, we might generally focus on a central element, so a central tree. So it could be a fruit tree or a nut tree, generally in terms of a food forest. So because we don't want to be doing a whole lot of work for the food forest and providing all of the needs like the water and the fertilizer and the mulch, we want all the plants to do these things. So these are the different functions we want plants to do. So we want plants that suppress grass. We want plants that attract insects and birds to help with pest control. We want plants that create mulch, so plants that can be chopped and dropped, or living ground covers to help with mulch. Plants that accumulate nutrients, nitrogen fixers, also some plants that could be fumigants or pest repellents in the system. Habitat nooks, so habitat nook could be things like rocks or logs lying around. And plants that create different microclimates, so protection from the sun or the wind. And also we want to know what we're getting out of the guild, so we want food, fibre, medicine for us and perhaps livestock. So what I would do now, if this was in real life, I'd ask everyone to break up into pairs or groups of 3 and spend 5 minutes and go through each of those functions and think of 5 plants that they could, which would fulfill each of those functions. So that would be a little 5-minute exercise. And I'm wondering if I'd actually make cards to hand out to each group for that, or whether I'd just give them a list, remembering that we're out in the garden somewhere. Okay, next slide, please, Greta. So here's an example of some plants that would attract beneficial insects. So some coriander on the left and some cosmos. And remembering too that often letting some of your annual vegetables go to flower will bring in lots of beneficial insects. Next slide, please. So we've talked about functions and what functions need to be filled, but also pretty much every single plant has multiple functions. So a pigeon pea is a great plant to have in our food forests. Pigeon pea can fix nitrogen. It's the flowers attract beneficial insects and the bees love it. It's human food, so we can eat the pods either as being green pods or let them mature to be, that's my time, brown and have them as dal, or they could be livestock food. They can be cut and drop for mulch. They can provide shelter, wind or shade. And the king parrots also love them. So thinking that you're not just planting one plant for one reason, you're planting a plant that can do 3 or 4 different things in your food forest. Do you want me to stop there? That's 10 minutes. Or
Sorry,
I
I'm
can't
on
hear you.
how
Yeah, I was just
how many more slides? Because I'm sharing, I can't see, but are you almost?
I've still got a few, but I can just kind of tell you what I would have said, what I would cover.
Maybe, yeah, maybe we can wrap up with what you'd cover.
Yeah. So basically, I then talked about different animals in the guild and providing habitat for them. So things from your reptiles, birds, insects, and even mammals. And then the next slide, we'll be talking about water, having water around. So insects needing the water cycle and also frogs. Then we talk about how to put a guild together, remembering your site. And then the next one, that's just another quick little example. So next slide, please, Greta. I was going to use the Mango Tree Guild as an example because just about every book you read on food forest is an apple tree, which does not work in our climate very well. So I was going to go with the Mango Tree Guild. And next slide, picture of a mango tree. And then the last slide, or second last slide, I was then going to get people to work in groups again. 3 trees, lemon tree, banana tree, and avocado, they'd work on one of those and create a guild. And then once they'd done that, we'd work together to create a guild with all 3 trees. And this would be an example of maybe some cards that I did or a table with all that information, so they'd have that information to work on.